Sup? F1 2001. No, the other one. Formula 1. Since 1950, it is the top-level motorsport in the world. And oh, who am I kidding? You definitely watched that Netflix show. No need to tell you about it. Ah, there you go, Patrick! In all seriousness, we motorsport fans all know about the sport. We know the drivers, we know the cars, and we know how formulaic Herman Tilke's tracks are. And I refuse to pronounce his surname right because of that. While I like the sport, it's not enough for me to watch a full race or something. Besides, I'm more of a fan of dirt track racing and rallying, more fun that way. So you can tell that this is gonna be a promising review. Enough sarcasm, let's talk games. Nowadays, only Codemasters makes the F1 games, and Frontier if you count their manager games. But back then, much like NASCAR, the license wasn't as exclusive as now. By the early 2000s, Electronic Arts, Sony, Infogram, Video System, and others released their own takes of the sport. But by 2003, only Sony, with Studio Liverpool making them, was the one doing so. And they stopped doing it since 2007, only for the Codemasters to snag the license and make their first F1 game on the Wii for some reason. And then EA bought them and it has come full circle. But a short view back to the past again, I'll be covering one of the takes, because I can't cover all of them. If you're a big PlayStation racing fanatic, you might have heard of Psygnosis Formula 1 games, from Bizarre Creations' 96 game that started it all, to its solid PS3 game when they were called Studio Liverpool since 2000. It had its ups, downs, and a silly spin-off, but the one I'm looking at today is not the spin-off, sorry. Formula 1 2001. This is of course based on that year's season, where future champions Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso made their debuts. And Schumi wins his 4th season title overall, Max Verstappen of its time. While it was also released for the PS1 with a more arcade game mode to boot, I'll be looking at its PS2 version, because I'm that boring. Ooh, some copies came with a free DVD detailing the 2000 season, with interviews and other goodies included. My copy didn't come with it, it's a platinum release, and fuck, I hate how these look. Konami's best type beat. However, I'm not sticking with one version, I'm actually gonna compare two, the European PAL version and the American NTSC version. You might expect it to be just a refresh rate switch or the removal of multiple languages in the case of the US version, but it's actually way more than that, and it starts with starting up the game.
989 Sports.
The American version was published by Sony's 989 Sports, an American publisher that released a lot of the NBA, NFL, and MLB games to the mother country. So of course this has to play before reaching the memory card screen. In the European release, the slides for publisher and dev come before that screen, whereas the US one has them after it. Minute details sure, but I'm only getting started. The intro is alright, consisting of replay footage. It's always a treat when racing games have that, even if it showcases the silly physics this game might offer. Ooh shit, this is taking me back. Here's a main menu. Why is it all the way up there? Am I supposed to admire the background? The most important stuff you should care about are the two middle ones, Quick Race and Game Select. Format is what you expect, set how many laps, pick a driver and track, and you're all set. But what's interesting is that you can actually customize the grid, changing your starting position or your opponents. So if you feel like starting at the bottom, it's the place to be. In Game Select, you can do a single race, a test drive, a time trial, or just watch a race. Riveting stuff. But I'll be mainly focusing on the... I was thinking of doing the whole season at semi-pro difficulty, which disables any and all assists, and have the races go for half the length of their rail counterparts. But after racing in Noble Park, I decided against it and went with amateur, 10% of the length, and no refuels or tire changes. You'll see why in a while. Here's the teams and drivers of the season: Schumi, Mika, Kimi, Bad Role Model for Women, Car Guy, Baby Alonso, guy who got his car burned badly in the pits at the 94 German GP, and is overshadowed by his son, and Ralph. The European version only shows their heads, while the US one actually has the decency of showing their cars as well. but the driver roster is the most interesting difference. The European version was released in May of 2001, whereas the American one was released in October, and in between those releases, drivers changed teams during the season, which is quite unusual to see these days. I always thought they changed between them. But anyways, the American release actually reflects on the changes. For instance, the pros team in the European version consisted of John Lacey and Gaston Masakane, but by the time of the American release, they either moved to Jordan or just gave up midway through the season, so they were replaced by Heinz-Harald Frentzen, previous year Jordan, and Luciano Berti, formerly of Jaguar. It's okay if you don't know any of these people or teams, unless you're a casual F1 nerd, no one cares about them. I'm more surprised Acer used to supply engines. Oh, never mind, it's just rebatched Ferraris. Any Spaniard here disappointed to see Pedro de la Rosa exclusive to the US version? No? Okay. Now, I'm a somewhat big Ferrari fan, so I would pick either Schumi or Rubinho. But for this review, I'm feeling the Canadian pride in me, so despite him being a tax cheat, I'm doing the season as 97 winner Jacques Villeneuve. Hey, they got the rights to him. Yeah, for some reason he decided to copyright his name and likeness, meaning it was an impossibility to get even a former in the F1 games. So for instance, in Formula 1 97, they decided to just call him Driver 1 Williams, and have Maury Walker call him Williams number 1.
Race order. In first place, Williams number 1.
The good thing about that game is that you can rename anyone there, so you have no problem changing that to Jack. But hey, he's here now. Let's just hope the Honda engine doesn't fuck me up. First round in Australia. I know that this is emulating the actual F1 weekends, but I don't think I need that many free practices. Man, we went a long way from that. Right off the bat, the HUDs are so different in comparison, but let's leave that aside for later. I gotta be honest, despite looking decent and colorful, it just looks boring. Even in sunnier days, it just doesn't look interesting. It doesn't help that the faraway objects look really blurry. I have to disclose that I'm recording this off an emulator at 3 times the original resolution, so maybe this issue isn't prevalent when playing on an actual PS2, but still, it's weak. Not even Monaco can save it. Sure, you could argue that it's a PS2 game from 2001, but even EA Sports equivalent is more visually interesting. The cars themselves, well, aside from the liveries, they look the same to me. There's differences, but not enough to catch my eye. None of them are like the Wallace Williams. Maybe in a few years. Of course, as the teams were sponsored by beer and cigarette companies back in the day, there is a talk of censorship when it comes to these games. The cause of a few of their logos blocked out or replaced with something else. Let's get this out of the way. Ferrari's boring. They just removed Marlboro and made their logo square, but I'm more interested in the replacements. Benson and Hedges? They were the buzzing hornets before, but now they're the bitten heroes. Lucky Strike? Look-alike. Lookies. Becks? Bests. The West stuff in the McLarens were replaced by their drivers' first names, which is neat. And the Benetton ones have Model 7 replaced by Renault Sport. Foreshadowing. I am so glad teams are instead sponsored by gambling and cryptocurrency now. I hate F1. Only 3 views here, and the rear camera is always this. While there isn't a cockpit view, the closest this has is a TV pod camera. I'm actually glad they have it centered instead of slightly to the left like in real life. Unfortunately, the mirrors are so tiny from here that it's impossible to see who hit you. It's rather irritating, as I made worse when Bombercan doesn't even have a rear view mirror on top. This game has forced me to use chase cam. Okay, the HUDs. In the European original, the speedometer has this numerical tachometer, which is rather unusual to see in a racing game. Usually it's either analog or digital. Speaking of which, in the American version, the tachometer is the latter and more powerful, so I much prefer that. I like how the fuel gauge just says fuel in the US version, at least I got that cleared. But the biggest difference is the occlusion of the map. When you activate visual driving aids, you not only get the incoming corner warning telling you how severe it is, but also the map showing you what's behind and ahead of you and who's in first place. It isn't included in the European version, which would piss off some people, but I'm glad Studio Liverpool added a few good updates in a year. And hey, I like that it replicates the look of the TV podcast and the timetable during FP and qualifying even. Nice. For sound, it's not great. The engine sound is so bad. It's too distorted and too much for me. I'm sure y'all missed the V10s, but not like this. It's about as bad as the engine noise from Super Mario GP2. Really, I much prefer hearing the current engines. I'm not saying I don't like those 1.6 liters though. I'm actually surprised they managed to fit so much power into tiny engines even without the hybrid system. I do like how this plays when slowing down hard. The American version is much different, much less distorted, and frankly much better. I love how the audience suddenly goes quiet after the first 3 laps, but then instantly picks up again in the last 2. The menu sounds are rather random, it's quite charming in a way. Of course, this commentary from the late great Murray Walker and Martin Brundle.
Brilliant start, Murray.
Yes, a fabulous start, Martin. All the drivers seem to be away cleanly.
You know what I like about this game more than a modern F1 game from the Codys? Murray will actually say stuff during the race, even at the start.
Light 1 is lit. The 4's lit. We're almost there. Lights out, and they're away.
I feel those games miss an opportunity to have Crofty do the same. Unfortunately, the duo here will only say stuff at the pre-race, start, finish, when it hits a certain amount of laps.
20 laps completed.
And whenever you crash or go off the track.
And he's lost it. Onto the grass goes Jacques Villeneuve. And there was contact with Michael Schumacher. I think he touched the wall then. Jacques Villeneuve is suffering today.
He's done it again. Have a word with yourself.
And most of the time it's just silence as you drive away. Boring. I mean, I'm glad they don't talk often. They don't even tell me how well I did a sector. I guess that's reserved for the PS1 version. But really, as much as I wanted Crofty to say lights out and away we go in more racing games, I think I'd rather have no commentary at all. I like how Murray says stuff without pausing though.
Welcome back to the race after that short break.
For music, well, there's only the menu theme and its remixes for the intro and credits. It's pretty great, but also a disappointment there isn't more. However, that's only a problem in the European version. In the US version, there's licensed music, exclusively played in Quick Race. And on songs you might be familiar with if you grew up with the PAL version of Gran Turismo 3, or watched that Ashton Kutcher movie. There's Grand Theft Audio's We Love You, and overseas bass trap, Screw Up, and Super Moves even. 2001 was a good year for them, huh? Unfortunately, when the song is over, it repeats, so you have to change it in the pause menu. Disappointing, but hey, there's Overseer, so I can take it. Overall, I much prefer the presentation in EA's F1 2001, or even the PS1 version of this game. That thing had a Wipeout style HUD. Though that kind of criticism didn't stop sim fans from sticking with Richard Burns' rally, so who am I to judge? As this is based on a 2001 season, hence the name, it is a much simpler game. No cares, no DRS, no complex team communication, and no halo. It's amazing how y'all can see through it. But what hasn't changed is how the race starts. 5 lights show up one by one, and you have to wait for them to turn off. And the timing is randomized. They can go off after a second to even 5. And if you have rules and flags turned on, you better stay put or face a stop-go penalty and stay in the pits for 10 seconds. And as you can see...
Go, go, go!
I have shit reaction time. Despite the PS2 controller having most buttons pressure sensitive, which, by the way, is actually a terrible idea to me, the face buttons here act like digital buttons. It doesn't matter how much force you press it, it's either on or off. The only analog acceleration you get here is on the right stick, and... as someone who prefers triggers for gas and brake, this thing sucks for driving. I know it's done to emulate how RC cars control in real life, but when you have turning map to the left stick, it becomes a confusing mess. Worse yet, you can't remap them in-game, it's always stuck in this layout. Fortunately, I'm playing on an emulator, so I can just map the right stick to the shoulder triggers on my controller. Now it's more like a proper racing game. Anyways, the cars control well, they go so fast, they can tackle some corners smoothly, and are actually fun to drive, even if the sensor speed doesn't do justice in any camera, except the TV part one. Oh, that chase cam is trying, but the camera is zooming out a bit. However, that's only when driving with assist. Driving without assist sucks. Now, even with those turned off, you can still tackle some turns fine, but that only becomes a problem in other sharper ones. If you apply too much power on the exit, you cause wheel spin, and will more likely result in spins. And if you're so used to accelerating with the X button, that's a worse problem, so you have to tap the button a lot. Every time I looked like I'd spin out, I'd react like Piastri after seeing a jetpack mishap. Ugh. And touching grass only makes it worse, take that out of context. If one of the wheels ever go on the grass, it will go erratic and you have a hard time trying to correct that. Kiss your winning chances goodbye. Driving without traction control is bad enough, but driving without ABS is much worse. As you can read, it should have been shown to ALB in my opinion, but what it does is prevent lockup on the brakes. And if you have it off, well, I hope you have fun in the bunker. If you don't want to lock up, you mustn't brake very hard in the corners. But you know me, I do that shit all the time. That doesn't help that the face buttons are, again, digital in this game. There's damage, from losing both wings, which can hamper the car's handling, to losing wheels if you hit a wall just a bit too hard. There's also a chance you might get an engine failure. I haven't suffered anything of the sort in my playthrough, but you can faithfully turn them off, unless you're in pro difficulty. And oh, if you use manual gears, you can cause your car to stall and shut down, forcing you to put on neutral and start up again. Ugh, crap. At least I can turn it on by myself instead of needing an external motor from my pit crew to do so. Glad games aren't too realistic. And speaking of realism, I'm sure you're expecting me to talk about the crash physics. Someone put up this video while I was writing the script. Well, sorry for being the bearer of bad news, but I don't play these games to intentionally crash the other drivers for fun. I used to do that as a kid when I felt like driving backwards around Monaco and crash face to face into others. But if I want that now, I just play Burnout or any demo derby game. But as you can see, the physics can be a mess. If you hit someone at high speed, you might get on top of someone else's car or just make someone fly away until they land. Look, my car is upside down. Comment about GT games not having roll-ups until PS3 goes here. Pitting is here, as usual for an F1 game. If you schedule a pit stop on setup, the manager will warn you to box on that lap. However, if you feel you want to pit during your race, whether in some missing wings or to change tires because it started raining, you can just press select and warn the crew to prepare. None of this left bumper, go through a menu, and request would be crap. Just tap select to request a stop, or tap again to cancel it. It's not only simpler, but also less distracting. You don't want to go through a menu while in high-speed traffic, do you? Right, here's something more important, difficulty. It's trash. I could go all day on how drivers just don't give a shit about me and just nudge me while staying on the race line. Oh, what the fuck? How did they not see me? You'd have to be either blind or stupid to not see me. And yeah, that can be frustrating, but what's even more is that going from amateur to semi-pro is a big fucking jump. I swear, this game just doesn't have a good middle ground for when it comes to difficulty. Amateur is too easy for me because of slow AI, and semi-pro is too hard for me because I'm forced to drive without assists. If you want to have a challenge in amateur, skip qualifying. That just gives you a hint that the drivers fucking suck there. Holy shit! It's actually more fun to pass all the cars from last place. It's either that or expect rain to show up. With the weather set to forecast, it randomizes the conditions of a race each time you enter the weekend. Unfortunately, most of the time in the season it's all sunny and dry. If not that, then it's just some clouds and a bit of fog, but that's about it. The only other time I had rain come down was in Silverstone. The forecast told me it was all cloudy and what do you know, the track was wet during qualifying, and in the race it started dry, but then the rain showed up after a few laps. Now that's more like it. Now sure, I don't expect rain to come out in every race, but when amateur was just too easy for me, I kept wishing for it. Oh, speaking of qualifying, every race except the quick ones are always in a weekend format, 4 practice sections, 1 qualifying on Saturday, and then a warm-up and the race on Sunday. Pretty self-explanatory, but still, 4 FPs are too much for me. Thankfully, you can just skip all of them and get straight to the race, starting at last place. Qualifying will always be recommended, unless you're an amateur. And here's another difference, in the European version, showing the race links also shows the FP and qualified sessions, which is great. But the trade-off is that you have to wait until the clock ticks 0 for the session to be properly over. If I quit the session right after setting my time, I'll be set right to the back of the grid. I actually have to wait. While there is a fast forward button, it only speeds up to 2 times. There isn't even a jingle when you activate it. Instead, I have to endure the looping sound of the pit crew doing whatever the fuck. While the America version doesn't change the pre-race sessions no matter the length, it does let you skip to the end. I fucking love this version! The track list is what you might expect. 17 unique circuits from the season, which they stuck with it since 2000, until they decided to accept blood money from oppressive countries. As I'm doing the championship, I'll be giving my own thoughts on the tracks, and if I ever review one of the later F1 games, I'll have to ignore the ones I covered before, unless it got significantly remodeled like Hockenheimring. First up is Albert Park in Melbourne, Australia. Let's not have any marshal deaths here. It has a less smooth pre-2021 clutch game, but that's not my problem. My worst issue is the second to last corner. It's the sharpest turn and I get a lot of difficulty from even tackling it. It's hard to judge its corner radius. I almost get off the track. Overall, it's pretty alright, but I draw better. Next is Tilk! Well, before you got bored of his designs, of course. Quickly, it appears. Aside from the first two corners and turn 9, it's a nice track to easily get used to it. My favorite part is always the 2 long straights. I can see why people miss this course since it was gone from the 2018 calendar. It's one of the better so-called Tilk drums, which is rated an oceanful though. Interlagos, São Paulo. It sounds weird if you're not a Portuguese speaker. It's a short one this time, but the only corner you have to worry about is this right hairpin. You have to slow down considerably just to get through it clean, but other than that, it's a good one. I really like the fast spot with the finish line, even if it has a tendency to scratch the underside of the car. Ow. Then we do a little European tour, starting with the San Marino GP in the Imola circuit, a place that is nowhere near San Marino! Don't worry, it is something much worse 15 years later. It's fine. The chicane at the end reminded me of Le Mans, just with sand on the off track. But other than that, it's okay. Just having a bunch of chicanes out for safety reasons, of course, is something that I won't remember much. Unlike the next one. Oh great, it's Catalonia, whoa. Like Sophie said in her Forza Games videos, I don't like this track. I didn't like how sharp La Caixa turn was when I played those games, and I just find it boring to me. But as this is based on a 2001 season, this was before they shunned that turn and bent this part. And they changed them back more recently. Thankfully, it's much quicker to get through it with the F1 cars, with one lap lasting less than a minute and a half. It's trouble now, but still. Also, it just reminds me too much of Storyless in Portugal. Red Bull Ring! Not apologizing. Right off the bat, 90-degree right-hander. And that's not the worst part. Oh, fuck this corner. It's a blinded sharp one when it begins after a hill climb, and I just don't like it. The rest is great though. It's just a good feeling track to go around, with some white corners almost all around. I like it. If only this corner wasn't so shit. It's the obligatory Monaco Grand Prix! Everyone cheer! Something tells me that there's wider roads here, but that doesn't mean it's completely dumbed down. It's wall-to-wall action, where you mustn't lose a wheel right off the bat. This bit with a Grand Hotel hairpin will always be a challenge to me. Trying to get through this tight U-turn while in traffic can be very anxiety-inducing. And this hairpin before the last corner is also a bitch to drive on. I can't seem to get a good line here. Overall, despite the wider paths, it's still a difficult track and I quite like it. Now let's take a detour.
A big bienvenue to our fans around the world from Montreal, Quebec.
Looking forward for some maple syrup on my pancakes. Fuck! I don't just show the track while also driving as Canucks a lot here just because I'm Canadian. I also like it. While flat, it's a speedy track with some tricky chicanes and a narrow hairpin, and I really enjoy it. Though the first set of corners in this game is confusing. I played other F1 games for this video, including Ace F1 2001, and this point in here felt like it was further away from the starting line, and bigger. It's weird. Back to Europe, but the European GP, thankfully in the European country. It's the Nürburgring, or at least a GP track. This was the setting for the Luxembourg GP in the late 90s, but they didn't get away with that stunt for long. This is pre-Mercedes Arena, so it's a bit shorter, and actually quicker too. I like this iteration more than the current one. It feels like a breeze going through it, and the hairpins and the chicanes aren't much of a nuisance. Overall, amazing track. Magny-Cours, I forgot you exist. Pretty fine track with twisting between these hairpins. I don't like the last chicane though, have to brake much earlier, almost the same time as this sign shows up, but other than that, I like it. Silverstone, where it was more rectangular than it is now. At least it's the GP course and not the international one. Downside in my playthrough, it started running my way through the race. Thought I could try winning with slicks because if nobody decided to pit, then I won either. Unfortunately, I messed up and cost the win. Damn you, Michael! When it's all sunny and dry, it's alright. Fast chicanes and some 90-degree corners, it's whatever. Though I don't think turn 1 deserves a green corner sign. And how do people manage to get 117 here? I could only get a 128 so far. And speaking of completely different layouts, Hockenheim Ring, it still has a forest stretch. I can't see shit! It was a really fast track, only having to buy 3 chicanes for safety reasons, but not by much. I can see why people enjoy this more than the current layout. It's just so great speeding this track, and the chicanes are easily manageable, maybe except the second one because it's in a decline, but still, great track, but that doesn't mean I dislike the newer one a lot. It's good for what it is. I wonder who was in charge of the redesign. Tilk! Hungaroring, back without a more oval part. It's always the most interesting bit to me. The duo says it's a difficult track for overtaking, but even then, it's a pleasant one with easy to understand corners. Except for the very first hairpin, took me a while to get used to it because it comes after the starting straight and the track slopes down as I enter, but still, pretty fine track and pretty quick with the cars too. Spa, easily one of my all-time favorites in whatever game it's in, just because of your Rouge and Radion chicanes. Much like in Nürburgring, this was before they replaced the bus stop at the end with a chicane, so it's gotta be interesting. Well, actually, the most interesting part is how different the scenery looks. The last game I played at Hatspot was in RE Grid, and the difference is night and day. More trees and the walls are much closer to the track. Did it look that different back then in real life too? Well, I checked the ITV broadcast of that season's race and even this onboard video of Mika in 2000, as well as the version EA's equivalent, and it turns out, no! The EA version actually has the most accurate depiction. It may have a few out of place bits, but it's still spot on. This is just a mess to think about. I mean, sure, the track is still good, the difficult corners and twisty chicanes on the way, as well as the old bus stop, but this depiction is just bemusing to me. It's truly... Anyway, good old Monza hasn't changed since, at least the F1 layout, though for some reason the layout in the menus and the track preview have the old red field chicanes instead of the current version, and it just bugs me. Oh fuck, how can I forget? The track selector has this cool chrome rubber band that shifts shape as you hover over a course, which they sort of replicate in the next two games. Anyways, Monza is simpler, even with the chicanes, but there's still the caveats like the straight before the Ascari bit. It's a fun track, but also the city looks rather different. After Spa, I'm starting to question the accuracy of these tracks. Everything here just looks too wide to me. Oh well, I pissed off the Tifosi there, so that makes up for it. Cope and save! And that's the last of the European stuff as we go to the United States with Indianapolis. Never forget. Aside from the last corner, which is the bank turn 1 from the Brickyard, it's completely flat. But that doesn't mean it's a total bore. The corners are great, and this old chicane can be difficult to traverse, especially when you're in traffic. It's a much simpler track compared to most, but it's still great if you ask me. And we finish it off with Suzuka, and to celebrate, I bleached my hair really short. I swear, these tracks just look too wide to me, and the Casio triangle just looks so wrong. I played GT4 a lot before, I know what it should look like, but there I remember that this game is based on a 2001 season, and this was before the triangle got tweaked, and yeah, I got that detail right. Which only makes the Spa rendition even more questionable. Also, these bleachers were gone by the time of that year's real Suzuka race. Regardless, it's pretty challenging, with a snake slalom on the eastern part and a dreaded hairpin. I thought it had some special name for a hard corner to get through, even with traffic on the way, but it's actually just called a hairpin. Anyways, yeah, great track to cap off the season. And so, in my silly headcanon, Jacques Villeneuve has become the 2001 Formula 1 championship by winning all but one race, like he wasn't even trying. Félicitations au double champion! Now pay your taxes. So what's my reward for winning the championship? An image gallery? And I have to do it 3 more times in different difficulties to get them all? All that for some pics? This doesn't incentivize me to complete this. At least that Star Wars game so reviewed had concept art as well as characters to unlock. This is nothing! There's auto modes, of course there's auto modes. You have test drive, where you just drive however many lights you like alone, testing whatever settings you change and all that. It's pretty simple. Time trial is the same, but you can't go to the setup menu or adjust your assists. You're just doing laps to get to the fastest out of the leaderboard. In the European version, however, it has a challenge mode where you do 3 laps around Spa and then record on their old defunct website to have your best time put in that board. For what though? I really don't know. I tried looking up at the back of the manual and Wikipedia, but they don't tell me if I could win a prize for being on top. I'm not even sure I can go to the website via the Wayback Machine. And then you have spectator mode where, again, you just watch the race. Pick whatever drive you want to see, or let the auto director do it randomly. I don't like how the cameras tend to zoom too close to the driver when they're alone, but the upside is that it's cleaner than the instant replays. So that was Studio Liverpool's F1 2001. For being their first ever PS2 game, it's rather mediocre. The difficulty doesn't have a good middle ground, weather isn't as random as I thought when set to forecast, and while the driving is pretty great, it can get boring. Even more boring than waiting for your pit crew to stop stalling with your teammate. It's not as bad as F1 98, and the changes in the US version are very appreciated, but it's still whatever. If I can recommend something, play the PS1 version instead. Or maybe EA's offering. At least they acknowledge Tarso Marx.
Marquez is 19th.
16th for Heinz Harald Frentzen. 18th place is Benaldi.
Well, I've come this far, so let's not hit around the bush. After a month-long break, I'm starting the next year proper with Gran Turismo 4.